It'll turn green.
Good evening. It's 7 p.m. and I'll call the regular meeting of the Board of Education to order. I could use this one time. That would be the first. All right. I'm going to ask the coordinator to call the roll.
And then speak up.
Ms. Pearson?
Present.
Mr. Rollins?
Here.
Ms. McCulloch? Ms. Cull?
Present.
Ms. McCulloch?
Here.
Mr. Siegel?
Here.
Ms. Haley?
Here.
Ms. Stanford?
Here.
With 7 members present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll now take a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we start each board meeting, it bears reminding that the mission of the Rockford Public Schools is to collaboratively engage all students in a first-class education for changing worlds. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank you, Kim Peterson. Kim is working behind the scenes to produce the board's broadcast via YouTube live stream and Comcast Channel 20. I'd also like to welcome Superintendent Student Advisory Council Representative Brooklyn Pure from Guilford High School. Hey, and we'll hear from you later. We will now recognize and celebrate outstanding contributions of our students and staff, and I will give the floor to Mr. Dotson. There he is.
It's the fun part. Good evening. As always, we are excited to recognize Rockford Public Schools' outstanding students and staff and celebrate their great achievements. Starting out, coming up first, the Scholastic Art and Writing Award winners. Founded in 1923, the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards are the nation's longest-running, most prestigious recognition program for creative teens. This year, Rockford Public Schools had 13 individual regional winners. Yes. All right. So coming up first, from Guilford, Gadir Al-Sami. From Auburn, we have Ashal Samir, Jade Stone, and Cassandra Aguilar. From Jefferson, we have Aiden Lundstrom, Ana Almanza Robles, Brianna Laney, Devani Garcia, Isaac Sanchez Hendricks, Monteria Gregory, Maya Hildebrand, Prosper Lavanzu, and Uradi Zarate. If you please come on up, let's go. Where you are? As they're going around, I want to give in addition to winning the regional recognition, Urade received a national gold medal in the drawing. Yes. Urade received a national gold medal in the drawing and illustration division. This award places her in the nation's top 1% of all high school artists. So, all right. Next up, we have Poetry Out Loud. Jefferson High School students Sarah Carter and Makira Rogers finished in first and second place, respectively, at the Northern Illinois Regional for Poetry Out Loud, a national poetry recitation competition presented by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Poetry Foundation in partnership with the Illinois Arts Council Agency. Following the regional, Sarah and Makira competed in the Illinois State Poetry Out Loud competition in Springfield on March 13th. Congratulations, Sarah and Makira. All right, moving right along. Next up, we have the IHSA Journalism. In the journalism state competition, we had 2 Rockford Public School high school students qualified for and competed in it. At sectionals, Jefferson freshman Sophia Castro placed third in sports writing, and East sophomore Ella Gray placed third in review writing. This qualified them to compete at the state level in Normal, Illinois on Friday, April 21st, where they faced over 30 other students from across the state in their categories. Congratulations, Sophia and Ella. We look forward to seeing how you grow in your journalism skills next year. Are they here? Let's give them a round of applause anyway. All right, IESA Wrestling. Congratulations to our IESA Wrestling state qualifiers. First up, we have 7th grader David Cannon from Flynn. This was David's second consecutive year qualifying for state. David competed in the 105-pound weight class. Great season and good luck for going for a third trip next year, David. Next up, we have 6th grader Sean Foltz. Sean represented Flynn Middle School competing in the 100-pound weight class. While he did not place at state this year, it was a great experience for such a young athlete. Next, we have 8th grader Kane Famarath from Eisenhower. Kane lost his first state match, but then rallied to win 4 straight. He ultimately ended up 4th in state at 167 pounds after a loss in the 3rd place match. Great job, Kane. And then next, Saya Hongmankune was a 7th grader, also from Eisenhower. Saya placed 6th in state at 90 pounds. Saya began her state run by winning her sectional in DeKalb and then her first 2 state matches, advancing to the state semifinals. All while doing a great job competing against those boys throughout the state. Great job, Saya. Congratulations. IESA State Chess. The Thurgood Marshall School chess team competed in the IESA State Tournament in late February, and the results were outstanding. Members of the 6th grade team are Shlok Mamidi, Vivan Bawa, Ian Austin, Logan Dickinson, and Ibrahim Altaye. As a team, they placed 4th overall. Individual members' accomplishments included Schlock, who tied for 2nd overall, and Vivan, who tied for 6th overall. Great job and a great season. Way to go. And then the next members of the 7th grade team include Yuvraj Shenreddy, Akif Asoy, Alexander Truong, Braden Velez, and Nolan Velez. Together, the 7th grade team placed 3rd overall. Individual member accomplishments were Raj and Akif, who tied for 2nd overall, and Nolan, who tied for 8th overall. Congratulations to all of you. What a great season. Rockford Area Arts Awards Youth Arts Ambassador. Lincoln Halverson, a sixth grader at Maria Montessori, was awarded the Rockford Area Arts Council Youth Arts Ambassador Award at the RAAC Arts Awards ceremony in March. The Youth Arts Ambassador serves as a youth ambassador of the arts to the community of Rockford for 1 year. Congratulations on your appointment, Lincoln, and I know Lincoln isn't here this evening, but we're going to give Lincoln a round of applause anyway. All right. Rockford Elementary Basketball Association. Congratulations to this year's Rockford Elementary Basketball Association, also known as REBA, winners. First up, Spring Creek Elementary School girls. Jayla Taylor, Abigail Glaive, Abigail Watkins, Carrie Williams, Jemiah Gilmore, Kavaya Williams, Talia Taylor, and Rakea Cook. Ariana Walker. Congratulations on a great season.
Thanks, sir.
All right. Shout out to the coach. What's up, coach? All right. Next up for the REBA Basketball Championships, Bloom Elementary School boys. Let's go. Damari Bailey, Drayton Davis, Weston Davila, Shemaiah Durham, Landon Ellis, Natarion Fair, Cade Harris, Jace Hassler, and Adonis Williams. Both teams finished the season 8-0. Congratulations, players and coaches, family, friends, for a great season. Way to go. We now have the Presidential Award for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching. Auburn High School physics teacher Mariana Ruggiero is a finalist for the Presidential Award for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching, the highest honors bestowed by the United States government, specifically for K-12 science, technology, engineering, and mathematics teaching. Ms. Ruggiero was selected as one of only 3 finalists for the state of Illinois. In 2021, she was the Illinois Outstanding High School Physics Teacher of the Year, a much-deserved recognition from the American Association of Physics Teachers. Ms. Ruggiero will move on the National Selection Committee, where one finalist will be chosen from each state. Good luck and congratulations on this outstanding recognition. And last but certainly not least, major shout out to principals, teachers, everyone in the schools, family members, moms, dads, aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends of the family. Thank you for all you do for our students. Thank you. Thank you. That is all.
If there anyone who's going to exit prior to moving on to the business portion of our meeting, we'll give you a moment to do so.
If you will indulge me briefly, Prosper Lavunzo just arrived, and I want to make sure he got his recognition. Go ahead, Prosper. We are now at the petitions and communications portion of our meeting, when we invite the public to make comments. The board will not respond to the comments at this time. If it's appropriate, you will be contacted in a timely manner by staff. Each speaker will be allowed no more than 2 minutes to address the board. It is not appropriate to address individual board members or individual administrators, or to discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such open meetings. 2 names will be called at one time, the one whose turn it is to speak and the person who will speak next. If you look to your left, you will see 2 digital clocks. One shows the total time allotted to the public comments, and one shows the total time for each speaker. We thank you for your interest, and we thank you for your cooperation with our guidelines. Our first speaker is Katina Barnett, followed by Ricky Naylor.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Katina Barnett.
Katina, I think you need to turn the mic on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Katina Barnett. I am the union president for Bus Drivers and Nutritional Service 1275 A and B. Drivers, please stand. They're pretty cool people. I'm here to talk about First Student. It is talks on the board that she makes my day. That First Student is on the possible docket as a concern that you may consider bringing them in with us to work with us. I'm looking at the negativity behind that, 110%. I'm looking at, in 2009, they had rape charges brought against them from their drivers. I'm looking at, in Miami Valley, they had 6 out of their 26 employees that were not even legal employees. They didn't even have background checks. Here in Winnebago County, our background checks are so intensive, it takes some of our drivers 6 weeks to even get on board to drive. First Student is across the United States. In Napa Valley alone, their major problems are their bosses. And I feel personally, if we're going to bring another company in, we need to investigate everybody, down from their drivers all the way up to their bosses. If their bosses are shady, that's a bad deal for us. Because how are we paying for a company or looking to pay for a company that is not going to represent us well in the long run? we represent everybody well. We do a great job. In Chicago, independent research by the Keystone Research Company found that privatization cost them more than more than $223,900 to taxpayers alone in Pennsylvania. That's an increase. Can our taxpayers afford that? I don't think so.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Drivers?
Ricky Naylor,
Yeah,
followed
let's go.
by Nina Giangeli.
Don't start my time yet. Let them leave. Okay, last week, I think your chief of schools notified you guys how your black students were 17 percentage points behind the Hispanic students and the white students in terms of being on track for graduation. Now, you guys talk about representation matters. Okay, if it mattered, then why are those black students so far behind? There are no Hispanic administrators. There are no Hispanic board members, but yet those Hispanic students are running neck and neck with the white students. So what this is about, people, we need a call to action with this school district. And we can't get that out of this administration because there's no leadership in there. You guys need a new North Star. So hopefully the new board members come here tonight, they focus on that. First of all, as far as a structure, you need to bust these schools up. You got one chief of schools for this whole thing. You need a chief of schools for elementary, middle school, and high school. The same thing you do up in Madison. It's time to spend that money where it needs to be spent at, and not don't just put extra administrators in those school buildings. Get a leader of all those schools so we can hold those principals in those middle schools and each school accountable. Now, you guys said back in 2019 you was going to address the racism in this school district. You had a big thing, and nothing happened. 2019. Now, you guys, all you did back then was just talk the talk. Now, one school district actually walked the walk and did something about it. So I'm going to leave you guys a plan here, and hopefully you don't take 5 years to get busy with this plan and get it moving forward. If these people can't get it moving forward, then bring somebody else in that can. Because this racism, this white supremacy that you guys got around here, it has to end. So I'm going to leave this here for you guys. Got copies for each one of you guys.
Thank you.
So you can get it going.
Nina, followed by Ron Milner.
Good evening. My name is Nina Gianangeli. I'm a Rockford resident, an educator in a neighboring district, and a member of the Education Committee of Eliminate Racism 815. Tonight, on behalf of our committee, I'd like to thank our departing school board members for listening to our concerns and collaborating with us to make RPS 205 a more equitable and vibrant learning environment for the children of Rockford. I'm an English teacher, so my favorite author is Toni Morrison, who wrote, "The very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being." As a teacher, I do not like distractions in my classroom, but in my 12 years as an educator, I've witnessed firsthand how structural racism distracts all of us, students and educators alike, from our imperative work. I've seen students question their reasons for being and witness colleagues exhaustively explain and explain. This is why our committee focuses on eliminating racism so that we can better address students' behavior with trauma-informed restorative justice practices, hire more teachers of color, and ensure our students of color excel in school. Because we are still working towards these goals, we will continue to speak at these board meetings, but tonight we want to share our gratitude for the school board's efforts in hearing our message. We are aware that hearing about, talking about, and working to eliminate racism is not easy or comfortable. Oftentimes, our public comments might feel like personal attacks, complaints, or harsh criticism. Please know that our comments don't come from a place of hate, but instead a place of love. We love the children of Rockford. As Cornel West said, justice is what love looks like in public. We care about these students just as you do, and we want them to have a learning environment without the destruction of racism. We want them to be able to do their work. It's clear you want the same. It's our hope that the new board and Eliminate Racism 815 will continue to listen and collaborate with one another to ensure such a learning environment for our students. Thank you, departing members, for listening to our concerns, answering our questions, considering our recommendations, and sharing resources with us to support these students.
Nina, your time is up, but before you step away, would you just remind everybody of the summit that is occurring?
Next Thursday, May 4th, Eliminate Racism 815, and many community organizations are sponsoring a summit on racism to eliminate racism at the Sports Factory. And all of the information can be found at our website, which you can just Google.
Thank you. And thank you for your kind words. Ron Milner, followed by John Eckberg.
Hello, board, and hello, citizens of Rockford. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. My name is Ron Milner, and since I have 2 minutes, I'm going to be very quick. The way to combat poverty and racism is with knowledge. The way to defeat it is with financial knowledge. I have a company called Boodle, and we are a financial education company, and we go into schools and districts around this state, and we teach a financial education course called Money 101. I have information here that I'm going to leave with the board so you can read about the schools we've gone to, such as Fenwick High School in Oak Park, DeKalb High School in DeKalb, Lewis Elementary School in Chicago. Financial education is fundamental to this environment that we live in, because in order to strive and thrive in this environment, you must have financial knowledge. And children today don't get this. 80% of people that go through college or school, they've never gotten financial education. What I'm requesting from the board is look at my information, contact me, and we would like to be a vendor for the school district. If we don't do a good job, don't hire us. This taxpayer money is too valuable. If we do a good job, bring us back in. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Milner. Our last speaker of the evening is John Eckberg.
Thank you, board, citizens. I have one kind of not so fun thing to share, and then one much more fun thing. There was a day when our school board elections were a spirited contest, but civil, between two candidates. This last election cycle was unfortunately dabbled in some not so great campaign tactics, and you saw thousands of flyers like this go through your mailbox, costing tens of thousands of dollars, and it was full of things like unsubstantiated claims, kind of subtle character assassinations, and it was unfortunate. I thought that we could keep the level above the gutter politics of the bigger races that we used to see, but one of the main things is let's elevate our school board elections to being more civil and more discussion about real issues instead of somebody got an F for their serving, unpaid service. Anyways, so that's the hard part. The best part is I'm here to correct some of the misinformation about my friend Jude McCulloch and her 14 years of service, unpaid service, 20 to 30 hours a week. Amazing. How many people do that? Not many. It's a calling, and she did it well. She's tenacious, and there's three things that she did, many other things, but I'm just going to mention three of them, was her the rolling out of the academies. I really, really appreciate kids getting real training in the career path that will give them a good future. Second thing is, during the COVID madness, she was there holding the school doors open. When other school districts, big schools, were shutting them down, oh, just go to your computer at home, you'll be fine. It was a terrible, terrible disservice to our kids to shut schools down. Thank you for holding the schools open as best you could. And finally, the taxpayer levy was flat, meaning it could have been a lot worse. We kept the school tax levy flat, and I want to thank you for those and many other things for your services. So thank you.
Thank you. Your time's up. We're now on to the Reading Horizons academic return on investment update. And is that Mr. Zediger? Okay. Oh, waiting for election.
Just wait on the presentation. Yes. I was a teacher. Wait time is great, but no, that's not what I was doing.
Dramatic pause, right? I thought maybe I was supposed to be doing something.
No. All right, let's see. This is on. There we go. Okay, good evening. We are here tonight to present the update on Reading Horizons. As a reminder, Reading Horizons is one of our two Tier 3 academic return on investment projects that we've engaged in over the last 3 years. So this is a mid-year update. The board heard the update on our Freshman Academy a couple of meetings ago, and this is the update on Reading Horizons. As all of our work, Reading Horizons and our Tier 3 study support the work of our equity imperative as we look to interrupt the predictability of student outcomes based on zip code. We know that this is the actual picture right now after our first year of the system-wide framework as we look at how our schools are executing on our standards of practice as well as our overall school scorecard. This is where we want them to be. We want them to be able to have a green or blue school in every neighborhood throughout Rockford. The Reading Horizons supports our universal goal and universal goal number 1 as we look at third grade literacy. And so we look at some real intentional focus on student achievement with the Reading Horizons. As the board is aware, we set the baseline last year at 15% with our third grade literacy, and our goal is to grow that by 5 percentage points by 2024. And Reading Horizons being our foundational literacy program is the, for lack of a better use and no pun intended, the foundation to get us there. As the board has been updated, and we'll talk a little bit more about with Annie Pfeiffer as she comes up, the science of reading and the very structured and systematic approach to foundational literacy is something that our students need. 65% of kids in a class require that structured literacy approach. And Annie will talk about this later as we look at the components of Reading Horizons, but just as a visual and a point of context for board on how important this systematic approach to foundational literacy is. So as we take a look at Reading Horizons, not only is it a Tier 3 study, but it also is a standard of practice. So as a reminder to the board, you'll see that this is something that you'll recognize as one of our standards of practice for elementary. It's graded on a 4-point scale. And this is the type of information that our buildings get and receive as we do our observations and fill out our observation checklist. One point of differentiation between our Tier 3 study and our standard of practice is that our standard of practice, the scores that go into the system-wide framework and their school scorecard only come from the spring evaluations. The fall evaluations are kind of a formative check to see where we're at in regards to that checklist, and then the springtime is the actual percentage that you see that will show up on their scorecard. So hypothetically, again, these are hypothetical, but just to put it into context for board members, where you see on the left the percent of fidelity, so that 80% fidelity on the checklist, and what that would equate to if we were to apply it to the standards of practice in the school scorecard. So as we move on, I'll bring up Annie Pfeiffer to talk more in depth about the Reading Horizons, where we're at in the implementation of this program, and also results. Annie.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Annie Pfeiffer. I'm the Dean of Foundational and Early Literacy here in RPS. So I'm going to give you an overview of Reading Horizons program. We're going to go over some of the data from the ROI study and then some updates on our next steps as well. So Reading Horizons is our foundational literacy program, which is basically a phonics program. We use it in all kinder through third grade general education classrooms. We launched it in 2017, so this is our 6th full year of implementation of Reading Horizons across the district. And it takes about 30 to 40 minutes of the daily literacy block. So not the whole block, but an important part. So this is Scarborough's Reading Rope. It is an infographic that represents decades of reading research. I like to ground all conversations about literacy within Scarborough's Reading Rope so we know where we're living in the big picture of literacy. So an important takeaway with Scarborough's Reading Rope is that there are 2 major strands in Scarborough's Reading Rope, and they are both equally important in learning how to read and becoming a skilled reader, which is the ultimate goal of all literacy instruction. So the upper part of Scarborough's Reading Rope is our language comprehension strand, and that is basically everything that goes into being able to understand the words that you read and the sentences that you read. The bottom part is called the word recognition strand, and that is everything that goes into actually being able to read the words on the page and to be able to pull them off of the page. And so the goal is that as those strengthen, they intertwine, and then that leads to skilled reading. So Reading Horizons really lives in the bottom part of Scarborough's Reading Rope in the word recognition strand, specifically in the decoding and spelling substrand, which is orange on your infographic. Reading Horizons provides the tools and training for our teachers here in RPS to provide high quality instruction for the bottom part of Scarborough's Reading Rope. And the goal of the bottom part of the rope is for students to become increasingly automatic, which means that they become fluent readers, and that frees up cognitive space while they're reading so that they can understand what they read. So there's lots of supporting research. If you go back to Matt's infographic, about 65% of students actually require systematic, structured literacy instruction and reading foundational skills. That really means that it needs to be these 3 things. So it needs to be taught sequentially, which means that we go in skills in order from simple to complex. It also needs to be taught explicitly, which means that we're being clear and concise in our instruction. And it also needs to be taught systematically, which means that we have systems for how to deliver our instruction and practice for students. And Reading Horizons really provides us with the tool for our teachers to be able to do that. So Reading Horizons is organized into the daily core 4. So all across RPS, all of our teachers are doing these 4 parts every day, just with different phonics skills. So the first part is called review. That is where they're connecting previous phonics skills that they've learned to new phonics skills that they're going to learn that day. It also gives students a chance for recall and retrieval of previously learned skills, which is really important. The second portion is the instruction part. That is the I do phase. That's where the teacher is explicitly and clearly teaching and modeling the new phonics skills for students. The third phase is dictation, and that is a fancy name for the we do phase. That's where the students get lots of guided practice in spelling and reading words and sentences with that target phonics skill. And then the last phase is transfer, and that's really the you do phase or the independent phase, where we want students to be transferring their phonics skills that they just learned into real actual reading and text. And that's the ultimate goal of the bottom part of the Scarborough's rope, which is for automaticity or fluency with word level reading. So that is a little background on Reading Horizons. Next, we're going to talk about implementation and how that's going. So step 1 of this ROI study way back when it started was to make sure that we were actually implementing Reading Horizons effectively. Our implementation levels differed at that time before we had the standard of practice as a tool. So the ROI ROI definition of success number 1 was that 80% of teachers will reach 80% or higher on the implementation checklist. A little confusing with both being 80%, but that's what we're looking for. So that's really our metric. So the process that we use to do this is we use this Reading Horizons Success Checklist. So this checklist was created by the ROI support team, which is a mix of classroom teachers, instructional coaches, administrators. They created this checklist of all the important things that we want to see in a Reading Horizons lesson daily. The people that fill out this checklist are the instructional coaches in the building. They're really critical to the success of Reading Horizons. Most of them are Reading Horizons certified coaches as well. So they do this twice a year, all K through 2 classrooms. They go in, observe lessons, fill out the checklist, and then that leads them to some really nice opportunities for coaching cycles as well and job embedded coaching throughout the year. And the checklist is basically the daily core 4 plus. It just has specifics within each section of the lesson that we want to see every day in every class. So looking at some data from our checklist, we have, when we first started the ROI in 2021, we started at 58% fidelity on the checklist. So, barely above 50%. We wanted that to go up. It went up to 62%, so up but not enough. In 2021 and 22, we started a little higher at 67%, got that up to 74%, which is a bigger jump, and getting closer to that 80% goal. This year, we actually started in the fall at 83%, which is really good for the fall. It's a really good baseline. It's above the goal. And trending-wise, we always did better at the end of the year than the fall, so we're expecting that number to at least stay above 80%, hopefully go up even more. So that is that data. This is a little more in-depth data if you go school by school. So on the left, you have the percentage of teachers that are meeting 80% or higher on the checklist, and this is comparing fall of 2022 to fall of 2023, so this year. So you can see some nice improvements across the district, also a higher starting point and baseline as well. And then the column on the right, we've actually found quite a bit of correlation between the teachers that are doing the transfer items on the checklist. So there's a section just for transfer items, which had been a weak point across the district, so we really kind of focused on those. So a big increase in the transfer items also correlated to an increase in the overall fidelity checklist. So another definition of success on the ROI study is IAR scores. So we know that raising achievement on IAR takes all the strands of Scarborough's rope to be strengthened, not just reading foundational skills, but having good reading foundational skills is critical to having a chance at reading that grade level text on IAR. So we're looking for a positive relationship between that. So in 2019, this is 3rd grade meeting or exceeding on IAR. So in 2019, we were at 14.5%, went down to 13.4% after COVID, went back up to before COVID to 15.3%, and we're projected for this IAR, this school year, to go up to 19.4%. So that's a significant increase, a little higher than we have had, which is good. We still have a ways to go. Obviously, these winter projections are based on the winter map growth test. It's pretty reliable in its predictability on IAR historically, so that's where we're getting those projections. So next I have some updates on the next steps that I gave you in September. So one of our next steps was really to continue to emphasize the daily core 4 through the standards of practice. We've done that every time we've done the checklist. Our scores have gone up. Our coaches continue to use the fall as formative for job embedded coaching throughout the school year. And also our principals have become very active in monitoring fidelity and getting involved with Reading Horizons as well, which is great. Our second next step was to transition to skill-based small group instruction. So throughout this school year, I've been to 19 of the 24 schools to do PD on skill-based small group instruction. So we have a lot of schools that are trying it and are well on their way. And that's going to be a big focus for myself and my PD for this summer and then the following school year to continue to support that in schools. And then our third one, I don't know why they're all numbered number 1. our third next step was to have extended transfer. So we have the transfer section of the lesson, but we also want to extend that transfer into real reading with real books. And the way that we've been doing that is by using decodable books. So decodable books are books that are written with phonics skills in mind so that kids get extra practice at reading in text, but they're practicing that phonics skill that they're learning over and over. And a lot of schools are using those, pretty much all of them. We also had some unexpected next steps, and these were really school-driven. So one that we didn't anticipate is that a lot of schools are trying flexible grouping during Reading Horizons instruction time. So the way that works is they all do Reading Horizons at the same time, and they differentiate their whole group instruction. So they use a walk-to-learn model. So students might go to a different teacher just for Reading Horizons times, and it allows the teachers to really get them at that like just right phonics level for their whole group instruction. So that's been really successful. Also, some schools have used kind of a all hands on deck because they're all doing it at the same time, so it allows for some smaller groupings of students as well. So that's been pretty successful in some places. Another one that we didn't anticipate is we're really starting to go beyond the standard of practice, particularly with our elementary principals and APs. So we have the standard of practice, but we're thinking about it not just as a metric, but as really as the way we're teaching reading instruction. So really digging into the ins and outs of what it means to have high quality instruction and teach kids to read effectively and efficiently. And so we've been doing that through the elementary principal meetings. They meet monthly. So we've covered all of these topics with them, or we're scheduled to cover them very soon. And they all connect to Reading Horizons and learning how to read. So looking forward, Reading Horizons is actually updating their curriculum. They're calling it V9, which stands for version 9. And we're really excited about it. We're getting it district-wide for all of K3. And some of the really great changes is that they have made changes to the scope and sequence based on reading research. They've also included phonemic awareness. So up until now, the current version is just phonics. It doesn't include phonemic awareness. Now they're embedding the two together, so we don't have to supplement anymore. And also they've made lots of great tweaks based on customer feedback, including RPS. So they've really listened to their customers, and they've made some really great changes. So little fun story, I sent out an interest poll to the instructional coaches who are really pivotal to Reading Horizons and very close to the work. I just asked them, to the best of your knowledge, would your school want the new version next year, with other changes happening, or would you want to sit on it and just wait till the following year? We actually got 100% of the instructional coaches said they wanted it for this next school year, and 100% on surveys rarely happens. So that was really exciting because they're excited too, and they're really close to the work, and they're leaders in the work. So that was exciting. So that is it. That's all I have, unless you guys have questions.
Board members with questions? Tim?
My first question is, with the observation and fidelity, when did the teachers started to observe the observation, to observe, to complete those charts?
So there's 2 rounds. There's a fall round and then a spring round. So it was in October was the fall round. So, we give them a little time to get into it, but then the first one is in October and then the second one is in March.
Okay, with that, the program has been in place for 6 years. Has these observations just start taking place?
With the standard of practice, I believe this is the 3rd year of the checklist observations.
Well, there have been coaching cycles as a part of Reading Horizons since our adoption in year 1, but without this sort of systemic support with the AROI study and the standards of practice, the value of the data was really inconsistent across the board. So we used the AROI study plus the standard of practice to really level set expectations for not only completing the data cycles, but also using the data.
Okay. Thank you.
Tim?
So
So the standards of practice are really the leading indicator. The theory is that Reading Horizons wasn't working because it wasn't being implemented with fidelity. If we get people to implement it with fidelity, we're going to start seeing changes. We're going to start seeing movement. I do see good news. The early indications based on the midwinter map scores are that we might see some movement this year. I guess on a school-by-school basis, are we seeing a correlation between high scores on the standards of practice and then increases in reading proficiency in that school? Do we see that correlation between the standards of practice and the actual results on the reading proficiency?
Yeah, we can dig into that a little more for the end of year review, but also we are seeing that mostly, but there are some schools that are scoring high on implementation and we're not yet seeing it in their scores, but it takes time sometimes to get those foundational skills up. I mean, it's a 3-year curriculum, so it does take time of good implementation to really see the actual gains.
Tiana?
So on this slide here, what would cause the number to go down?
From the 83 in the fall?
From year to year, yep.
From fall to fall?
Yes. So,
okay.
You have say Johnson. It started off at 89 and then it went to 67. What could cause that decrease?
Yeah, so that a lot of times it's just the K2 teachers. So depending on how big your school, that can be the difference between 1 or 2 teachers. So if you have a teacher move, get sick for some reason, leave. If you have a new teacher come in that hasn't been trained yet, that can cause it to go down. That's really one teacher difference. Also in some schools, they didn't have an instructional coach, so they went from having an instructional coach to not having one. That's only a couple buildings, but that can impact scores as well because they don't have that job embedded coaching within the building.
Okay, so what do you guys have to mitigate that? Because some of the scores are very drastic, goes from year to year.
Yeah, so we're working with the schools team a lot on the school improvement plan. So if their score did go down, I can guarantee it's part of their school improvement plan for next year. And the principals have steps to make sure that they get it up as well. And if it was missing an instructional coach, those positions are all being filled for next year. So that as well. There's also a lot of summer training on Reading Horizons as well. So any new teachers that maybe came in the middle of the year that didn't have an opportunity to get trained, they'll have opportunities too this summer as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. Pearson?
So I take it that Reading Horizons is not a part of the teachers' onboarding training.
New teacher training? Or
Correct.
Well, it is offered, but it's not required.
So that's problematic. And I think that's where there may be a contributing factor because too often we make things an option that will directly impact the success of our students' education where it should be mandated.
Yeah, and I think there's conversations about that happening as well. Our coaches are certified trainers as well, so they can do in-house training. A lot of them will do co-teaching for a while with the teacher and train them after school. So that we do have that option, but that's not as good as the in-person training with the representatives from Reading Horizons. So I hear you on that, and that's part of some conversations that have been happening.
So maybe legal could respond to mandating training if it's not part of our contract. How do we do that? How do we mandate? Or Ms. Detman?
You can certainly mandate the training. You just have to pay for it. And so I think part of the struggle when you talk about onboarding new teachers is we have a whole panoply of items that we're onboarding the teachers with. And so whether it would be effective right out of the gate for a brand new teacher when they're just getting accustomed to the district. So does it make sense to do it prior to them even starting? We have 3 days of training right before they even start school and come into our system, or do you do it after they start getting acclimated? And so, yes, we can mandate it, but it is a matter of the timing.
Can you clarify that it can be mandated to be done outside their hours?
Yes, okay. And we do. We have mandated training outside of the hours. On Saturdays, we've done that before for different trainings and so forth.
Okay. My question to you would be the version 9. So you had 100% who wanted that. Have we purchased that yet? And so the training for that will be this summer?
Yeah, well, that's the initial. There's multiple 7 choices for people to choose from over the summer. It's part of the supplemental training. It just went out in the talent development catalog last Friday. And then there'll also be additional opportunity within the school year too if they can't attend over the summer.
Okay. I just want to comment on the use of the system-wide framework and the fact that it's giving you information because this board has always had a problem with teachers not implementing programs that we've put in place. And so this framework has allowed us with the system with practice and service to see where the deficit is. Is it that we don't have teachers teaching the program we're putting out there, or is it because we're not giving them what they need to teach those? So it sounds like you're getting that information with a sort of, with the framework that has been put in place and those standards of practice and the standards of service coming together. Yeah. So kudos to administration for doing that. Any other board members have questions? Mr. Siegel.
Thank you. As was mentioned in the presentation, that Reading Horizons was one of the AROI items that we selected 2 years ago. 3 years ago? Wow, time flies. But this is evidence of how important it is to pick a couple of really, really big issues and look at them closely. And that is something that the board, asked for and was given, was the opportunity to select just a couple of things, spend an entire year looking at them kind of as they are, working in progress. And I appreciate the really thorough presentation. You answered a ton of questions that were in my head just on the fly, so thank you. But this chart is super duper interesting, and I think is really strong evidence of just exactly how important it is for us to measure these things. And it should all be measured, and this is great work. Thank you.
Thanks.
All righty. Any other questions? Seeing no lights, we're going to move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been quite a year for you, huh? Yeah. Moving from the classroom to there, and we're glad to have you. Thank you. We'll now move on to the consent portion of our meeting, which includes items previewed by the board committee chairs during the committee of the whole meeting. Those include the following: 5A, payroll; B, accounts payable; C, purchase orders; D, air travel; E, construction pay log, construction pay request log; F, the RPS managed work change order; G, the ESSER RPS managed work change order; H, the monthly cash and investment report for March of 2023; I, the financial results of March 2023; J, the teacher professional learning panorama; K, teacher professional learning, the curriculum associates; L, the RFP 2335 for banking services; M, IFB 2346 for Kennedy Middle School hard surface courts; N, IFB 2354 for the device repair services; O, the RFP for the 2355 student transportation services; the consent items from the stakeholder committee, which is the IHSA renewal for the 23-24 school year; and from the governance committee, the meeting minutes from 4/11/23, contract purchase orders, and the Freedom of Information log. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any consent items board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Seeing no lights, I'll ask the...
Excuse me, President
Denise,
McCullough.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes, what would you like pulled?
5-0.
Are there any others? All right, I'll ask the coordinator to call the roll on all the consent items from 8, 9, let me go back a page, from 5, 6, and 7, with the exception of 5-0, the student transportation services.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Ms. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Motion passes with 7 yeses.
I'll now take motion in a second for the RFP 2355 for student transportation services.
So moved.
Second. Take your pick.
Yeah. Got to get those in before you're done here, huh? Discussion.
Thank you. So perhaps Dr. Jarrett or Mr. Phillips can explain the process of the background check as was formally stated. Can you give the board more information on the difference, or is that the company's responsibility? So just, educate the public a little more on that, please.
It is the company's responsibility to complete all the background checks. It is a rigorous background check from the drivers all the way up to the people that would be managing, or from the office perspective. But we do have Executive Director Mike Slife here tonight that could possibly add to that explanation.
Thank you.
All right. So every driver in the state of Illinois, we do it a little different than other states. So our background checks are a lot more intensive. So whether you're a contractor for student or Sunrise or even the Ever Driven that you see out there, or us, we all have to go through the same background checks, the same physicals, even just to drive a car or a school bus. FBI fingerprint, state of Illinois fingerprint, and then different drug and obviously alcohol testing throughout. So it's a lot more rigorous in Illinois than it is in other areas.
Thank you. And they provide the information that it is indeed done?
Yes, we get that from the state.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Rollins.
I guess I didn't really think about this, but given the speaker tonight, there's probably more people watching tonight than when we talked about this extensively and what this is all about at the Committee of the Whole meeting. So we had 19 elementary schools whose staffs voted to extend their day by 45 minutes to provide an extended learning environment for students using the federal COVID relief money that we received. That's the good news. The bad news is, we've been short on bus drivers for a few years now. We went to what was called a 3-tier busing system in order to reduce the number of buses and bus drivers that we needed. And because of this new schedule, the new schedule with the elementary schools, we cannot service that new schedule with our existing bus drivers. So what we've talked about is the only way we're going to be able to do this, the only way we're going to be able to extend the elementary school day and provide extended learning for elementary school students is by bringing in a private contractor to provide that specific busing service. No jobs are being replaced among our existing staff. This has nothing to do with us privatizing our bus drivers. We're providing an additional service for this extended school day, and we got one bid. So if we want to do this for kids next year, if we want to extend our elementary school day by 45 minutes and give them an extended day to try to help make up for some of the COVID learning loss that we and pretty much every school district in the country are seeing, this is something that we really need to do.
Yes, and just for clarity, the method of bidding, how did we communicate that? I think there was a meeting here and on the website?
Mr. Youngblood, our Director of Purchasing, can answer that, Ms. Pearson.
Thank you.
We communicate our There we go. We communicate our bids. Every one of them is the same. We post everything on our website. We post it on a website called Bonfire Interactive we use for electronic bidding. We post it publicly in a local circulated newspaper. And most importantly, we email them directly to people who have bid in the past, people who operate in our market. Basically, as wide a net as we can, we send direct emails to contacts at those companies to notify them of the availability of that opportunity.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Yes, Ms.
I do have a question. Could you remind me of the deadline to get this service started again, and why is there such a rush again? I know that it's pertinent to get it done sooner than later, but I would feel more comfortable kind of looking more into the company.
So the reason the deadline is so important is because with it being April, any company that we would work with, in this case it's First Student, they would have to purchase buses and hire, I believe it's 79 drivers, is that correct?
It's 65.
65 drivers and purchase or locate buses. The real risk we would be into if we waited even a few more weeks, which is why I raised the issue with the board at our April 9th meeting, was because any delay would put at risk our ability to run the schedule. We've experienced bus route shortages before, and there really isn't a good way to do it. This also allows us to continue to grow our current driver force, which we know is a priority, to allow for some differentiated transportation in up to 5 schools that we're talking about doing some transportation within the 1.5 mile radius. So because of those two reasons, supporting our own routes as well as ensuring that we can extend the day for 45 minutes, we asked that this be addressed at tonight's board meeting to maximize the success. They felt very confident they could deliver those results, but any delay would really limit their effectiveness in being able to do that.
Ms. Haley, can I add one thing? First Student is a known entity to our region. They do service Belvedere School District as well as the Hononegah School District. So they do work in the general region.
I guess that's one of my concerns, but the other concern is that this is moving so quickly, and I don't think we've had the time to kind of really review it and have discussion. I know we did, it was presented last week, but there are new concerns that were presented this evening.
Ms. Pearson.
So the fact remains that we need to be able to service our students, and our educators are agreeing to extend their days. So we don't want to miss the opportunity to meet the needs of our students. At the same time, when we know that we are going to be presented with situations, and we know information ahead of time, it may not be the case in this particular scenario, but in past, information was not shared in the fullness for us to really make a sound, for lack of a better word, decision. So my ask is, and the expectation is, that when information or ideas or discussion or a possibility come up, that we have that discussion as soon as possible, as opposed to 2 weeks before and having to then vote in that time frame. So that is the ask. Thank you.
What was the last day for the Article 42 results that we received, that we'd have 19 schools?
We let it run through spring break, so that was part of the delay, was to ensure that we knew the total number so that we could maximize the route coverage. So we got better than expected results from our schools. This was a faculty by faculty vote, and we were thrilled that we had 19 elementary schools. The faculty volunteered to do that, and we sure are hopeful that we won't have to say no to any of those groups because of driver shortages. And so we will certainly take under advisement with the board to do everything we can to expedite the flow of information, and apologize apologize if we did anything that slowed that down.
So as Ms. Pearson said, this is about students and education and getting them more time in the classroom. And delaying it, we only had one bid. If we were to delay it, that would mean we'd have to send it out for rebid, which would never get back in time to put this in place, and we'll lose that opportunity with the teachers who have come forward to do so. So in the best interest of our students and their education, I would certainly support this initiative. It is just for 1 year, and we have the opportunity, we have the funds, and so I hope that the rest of the board members would support that as well. Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown, these 19 schools that will have the teachers work an additional 45 minutes for an additional 20% of their pay, correct?
Correct.
Will we be penalized by the state for those increases in their salaries? For any who are near retirement, for example, since it's over the 6%?
Right now, no, because the state is granting exceptions to that. So anybody, since COVID has hit, they've been allowing 6 assignments without penalizing districts for having to give those 6 assignments because of the teacher shortage and people's willingness to take them. So far, whenever we've got those penalty notifications from TRS, we have been successful in fighting those and getting those penalties removed.
And that's just since COVID.
Correct.
Pre-COVID, when we were filling classrooms, secondary classrooms, with a 20% bump in pay for those teachers, which also incurred those penalties, there was not an exception.
Correct.
And so we were paying penalties primarily for teachers in classrooms so that we could fill classrooms because we didn't have enough teachers.
Correct.
Any other questions? Oh, Ms. McCall.
Thank you. So you're saying this contract is only for 1 year. I want to know what is the forward thinking, what is the plan of action if more schools would like to elect to have this operation of the extended school day. What is the plan? You say we've had a bus shortage for a number of years. I don't want this to be, is this we get them in and we forget about it and just automatically renew it every year afterwards? What type of a plan do you guys have?
I think I can address that, Ms. McCall. Moving forward, these are one-time COVID dollars. So we had a total of $205 million in COVID funds that we are required statutorily to spend by the 2024 school year. This is one of the strategies to spend those dollars, to expend those dollars on students who were the most vulnerable, our elementary school. We also are extending our early childhood year by 36 days for 360 students. We're also providing a great deal of professional development. So this was one of those core strategies, but it is admittedly one-time money. To your point about sustainability, what we would be able to do is, because of the way we fund our schools that serve the highest concentration of low-income students have more discretionary dollars. So while this would not be sustainable at all elementary schools, under our current funding model, our schools that have students furthest from our target of success, those schools that have the highest concentration of those students would potentially be able to fund something like this moving forward. That would not be all 20 plus of our elementary schools, but I would say probably our 5 to 8 most vulnerable schools would potentially have the ability to do that. However, there would be a trade-off in that those dollars would probably be in lieu of doing other things that they're doing strategically with their dollars. What's been great about this one-time opportunity for the 23-24 school year is they don't have to stop spending money on things they're already investing in. Moving forward, they would have to make a trade-off in order to offer the extended day, or the district would have to come up with a way to fund this. Those would be our two options moving forward.
Well, there's a third option, and that would be to negotiate a teacher's contract with a longer day, teaching student day, And this contract is up in June of 2025, so those of you who are on here for 4 years could push for that. Ms. Haley, you had something?
Just about the reimbursement of that, the cost of that transportation, when does that usually happen?
There's a 1-year delay in that. So if we ran this program this year, we'd actually receive the money in the following year. The state's a year behind on paying for reimbursement for transportation costs.
All right. Seeing no other lights, I'll ask the coordinator to call the roll on RFP 2355, Student Transportation Services.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
No.
Ms. McCulloch.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Ms. Haley.
No.
Ms. Stanford.
Yes.
Ms. Pearson.
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses and 2 nos.
Thank you. We're now at the closed session consent agenda, which includes the following: the HR organizational report and addendum, and the following student discipline items. B0014X23 will be expelled for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. H0103X23 will be expelled for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. H0104X-23, the expulsion is held in abeyance, contingent upon an expulsion and abeyance agreement for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. H0107X23 is expelled for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. H0111X23. The expulsion is held in abeyance contingent upon an expulsion and abeyance agreement for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. H0115X23. The expulsion is held in abeyance contingent upon an expulsion and abeyance agreement for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. H0116X23 is expelled for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. It also includes the following closed session consent items approving these EIAs. B001523, B001623, D001623, D001723, H010523, H010623, H010823, H010923, H011023, H11223, H011323, H011423, P013723, P013823, P13923, P014023, P014123. I'll entertain a motion and a second to approve the closed session consent items.
So moved.
Second. Are there any closed session consent items board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Ms. Pearson.
9B, and 9D.
All right. Any others? All right. I'll ask the coordinator to call the roll on all items from 8, 9, and 10, with the exception of 9B and D.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Ms. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
And Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Motion passes with 7 yeses.
Ms. Pearson, shall I take B and D together?
Yes, you may.
I'll take a motion in a second for items 9B, H0103X to be expelled for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year, and item 9D, H0107X23 for an expulsion for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. These are closed items, so there will be no discussion. I'll ask the coordinator to call the roll.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
No.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 no.
Thank you. We're on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Jarrett, the floor is yours.
It is my pleasure to say a few comments about our outgoing board members. As we welcome in a new Board of Education, and we certainly are excited to do that this evening, I do, on behalf of our administrative team, just want to share our extreme gratitude for the way our outgoing board members, David, Tim, and Jude, have served our community. Just a little by the numbers to kick us off here. David is going to be leaving the board tonight after having served for 7.5 years. By my estimate, he has attended somewhere around 250 board meetings. Board Vice President Tim Rollins served for 12 years, 3 full terms, and by my estimate is somewhere in the range of 350 to 400 board meetings, as well as all of the preparation that they've all put into this. And then Board President McCulloch, at 14 years of service, is looking at probably over 450 meetings. And what is so powerful about all 3 of our outgoing board members is to say that they just attended those meetings doesn't begin to talk about the leadership, the hard work, and the preparation that they put in every single time, whether it was preparing for gut-wrenching student discipline decisions, whether it was leading our board through difficult conversations about tax policy, student achievement, race, and all of the things we've had to confront in this district. It has been my absolute honor to serve and work beside each and every one of you, and we are so grateful to have an outstanding new group of board members joining us, but we are extremely thankful that you have all chosen to serve our community so capably and with such distinction during your time on the board. I am, on a personal level, honored to have had the chance to be the superintendent during the majority of your tenure, and really am thankful for the way you have led our leadership team and the board in various capacities during your time, whether it's been committee leadership, whether it's been community leadership. And on behalf of each and every member of our team here in the district, I wanted to give you all a hearty round of applause and nothing but gratitude for your service. So let's please give them a round of applause. We also had a small token of our appreciation. Thank you for your service. Yes, yes, in addition to a nice meal as well, so thank you. And I hate to try to top that great recognition, but it is always a highlight of our meeting to have a representative of the Superintendent Student Advisory Committee speaking, and we have our president, Brooklyn Pierre, here to talk about some of the great work that the SSAC is doing. So I'm going to turn it over to Brooklyn to close it out. But again, thank you to each and every one of you for your outstanding work and leadership. And now, Brooklyn, the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening. My name is Brooklyn Pierre, and I'm the president of the Superintendent Student Advisory Council. So what that is, a little sum of what that is working alongside Dr. Jarrett and giving students within high schools voices directly to him so that he knows what's going on within the high schools. And I just kind of want to mention what I've contributed to the council, and that is my mission on mental health. There's a pamphlet that is coming to high schools soon that is called You Are Not Alone, and there is different resources in that pamphlet for students to be able to use as outlets to talk about their mental health if maybe they can't get that attention at home, that they have resources and have people to call. I also have the idea of maybe working with RPS after I leave. I am a senior, on having organizations within the school called You Matter or something of the sort that is actually an in-school place where students can go, where it's teen-led. There's obviously one adult that will be in the room to be able to lead it and have that supervision, but it will be student-led, and it will be being able to talk about mental health and having a resource. Obviously, adults are important in that sense too, so there will be like people like Marshmallows is a great example. It's a nonprofit organization that helps with suicide within teens that is very happy to come talk to RPS schools and collaborate with you guys to help teens and lessen the amount of suicide that happens every year. So that's my mission within the year, and I'm very glad that I was able to serve with Dr. Jarrett.
We are so thankful that you are serving on our advisory council and for your commitment to the mental health of our students. Thank you for your words. And with that, after honoring the service of our outgoing board members and Brooklyn's fine report, I cede the floor back to Board President McCulloch.
Next on the agenda is the opportunity for comments from board members. Are there any board members with comments? Ms. Stanford.
Well, I think I would like to just reiterate how much I have appreciated the three of you and your mentorship and leadership on the board has taught me so much. There's so much to learn, and I would not have learned half of what I have if it weren't for the three of you. So thank you very much.
Most welcome.
Ms. McCall?
I would just like to piggyback off of Mrs. Stanford. In my short time on this board, I really appreciate the different conversations and different viewpoints, the great discussions that were had with you guys, and I wish you all the best of luck, and don't be a stranger.
Ms. Pearson?
Thank you. So I have a relationship with RPS 205 board since 2017, and when I think back on 2017 and how I was introduced to the board actually in 2015 when I really started attending school board meetings. And in 2017, I had an opportunity to meet Mr. Dave Siegel, and he have been instrumental in my getting adapted to actually sitting on the board. There is a difference between being a board member and a community member. So as a community member, I had all these great, grand, wonderful ideas that I could do. And as I got a little closer and became a board member, you view things from a different lens. And it is not as simple as some may make it sound to be. It's difficult work, it's difficult decisions, and you have to be objective, respectful, and understand that it's really okay to agree to disagree. you do that with respect and dignity. And so I'm appreciative of relationships that I've developed being a board member, and a special thanks to board member Siegel for being there with my journey from the beginning. And to Mr. Rollins, I've observed Mr. Rollins for a long time, and I did a little background check on.
Good idea.
Did a little background check on Mr. Rollins, and the feedback that I received was very good, and I knew that he had a lot of knowledge, and he was kind of hinting that he wouldn't seek re-election. And I said, well, that knowledge will not leave with him. So I have been a sponge to gather information, to seek out the wisdom that he developed as a board member. I understand that as his profession, he comes skill loaded, but a board member, it was good to be able to have access to him. And to Jude, I certainly thank you for the 14 years of commitment. Each board member have their own unique personalities, and it is important that we learn those personalities and be able to work productively with those personalities. So when I think of serving for 14 years, I think about the time you sacrifice with family, wanted vacations, just time away, the multiple packets that you have to read, the labor that goes into it. So the role of a board member should never go without saying thank you. So thank you to the three of you for the service that you've rendered.
I would be remiss not to say anything, and I do appreciate Board President Ms. McCulloch for showing me the ropes, sitting down with me for 4 hours at a church and just going through all of the board packets so I understood at least the general, flow of things. I appreciate Mr. Siegel and Mr. Rollins for welcoming me, and your knowledge will be missed, and thank you for your service.
Mr. Siegel.
Wow. I'm good. To everybody in this room, it has been an extraordinary experience to sit with you and discuss public education, to be in a room with really, really smart people talking about something that's so important to a community is a really profound experience. When I came to the board 7 years ago, it was through an interview process, which kind of came to be the trend for the way like the rest of us came to the board. And one of the questions that I was asked is, what did I see as legacy for being on the board? And knowing that this is an institution of the budget of $500 million, it's got nearly 30,000 students, 5,000 employees, 41 buildings, what kind of a legacy am I going to leave to an institution like this? But feeling in something of a sassy mood, I answered with a Hamilton lyric, which is, legacy is planting seeds in a garden you'll never get to see. But that was only part of the story. The rest of the story is, legacy is planting the seeds when there isn't anybody to see you plant the seeds. Sitting in rooms talking about really difficult things, student discipline, employment issues, how we're going to spend our money in terms of real estate, and every other thing that goes into a school district, has been I'm trying to think of the right word. I don't know. It was like, I don't know. It was like getting into the world's greatest car, knowing you don't get to take it home, but you get to have that experience while you're doing it. It's really pretty overwhelming, and you all made me a much, much better person. And I'm hoping that it doesn't become the extent of it. as far as legacy goes, it goes beyond the people in this room. When I came to this board, we had different folks, and I had a great experience with all of them. I've got to mention Lisa Jackson, Jaime Escobedo, Anthony Dixon, Ken Scrivano, Cameron Muhammad, and Mike Connor. Mr. Connor was my mentor when I got on the board, and he taught me a ton of important things, mostly about process, mostly that he's a technology nerd, but he also taught me the things that I needed to pay attention to. And I have to give him his props. Maybe more than everybody else in that small group of former board members, he really had the biggest impact on me. To the incoming board members, Nicole, Paul, I see you there now, Grant. Hey, welcome. I hope that you have an equally powerful experience sitting and deliberating with these really, really smart people, really decent people. It's funny, we're elected officials, and we are sitting in front of the largest municipality in the community, and it's nonpartisan. When we've had discussions, we've had disagreements. Sometimes they've got a little bit on the testy side, but in those disagreements, could you tell who was on the left or who was on the right? Nope. The disagreements were, how do we solve a problem? And by going through our different perspectives, we ended up making up better ideas. It wasn't a matter of I had to win or someone else had to lose. This has been the best experience of my life. I mean, yeah, my kids, it goes without saying, but this has really been a tremendous experience, and I can't thank you all enough.
It's hard to believe it's been 12 years. For some reason, when I was thinking about this day, something that somebody said to me 35 years ago popped into my head. I was on active duty in Washington, D.C., and one of my civilian neighbors had bought a boat. And we were talking about it outside, and he stops and he says, you know, Tim, they say that the second best day of a boater's life is the day they buy the boat, and the best day of their life is the day they sell the boat. So Mr. Siegel knows exactly what I'm thinking. And when I first got on the board, people in the community, and more than once, people would say, "Oh, are you enjoying yourself?" And I was taken aback by it, and I was honest with them. I said, "No, I'm not enjoying myself. This is not enjoyable." The issues are difficult. The things that you see, some of the things that you see, are absolutely heartbreaking. You are constantly trying to balance different interests, and when you try to balance different interests, you end up making somebody unhappy. Sometimes you end up making everybody unhappy. There's rarely a clearly right answer, and honestly, sometimes it feels like you're just looking for the least wrong answer. Still, I am immensely grateful for this opportunity that was given to me to serve the community. It might not be enjoyable, but I thought when I ran that it's the most important work that you can do in a community, and I still think that today. I do want to thank some people, particularly my family and particularly my wife, Carrie. My wife's a teacher in this district. That is not an easy position to be in when your spouse is a board member. She did it gracefully. The people who know her understood that she and I don't always agree on everything, and people who thought that we agreed on everything don't know the two of us. My two boys who are still at home, when I ran for election, I was going door to door hauling them in a wagon. They're both taller than me now, and one of them's driving and one of them's going to start Drive Right this summer. Friends, my wife's a teacher. When we have friends over, 2 out of 3 are in education, and every meeting of friends ends up talking about education and education issues, and that was so valuable to me because it gave me an insight into how things actually work on the ground floor. I'm grateful to the voters of Subdistrict B who elected me to this position for 4 terms. I'm grateful to a community that has always wanted the best for the schools and been generous with their time. There are a few people I want to call out by name, starting with Vanita Hervey, former alderman, former plaintiff's lawyer for the People Who Care lawsuit. She and I drank a lot of coffee over at Katie's Cup, and she and I didn't always agree on things, but her insights and her knowledge were invaluable. Pastor Board, usually when I went out with him, he was taking me to the woodshed for something or other, but they were good conversations. Pastor Copeland, Rudy Valdez, on the business community, Einer Forsman, who spent enormous amounts of time with me talking about more business issues. I want to thank the administration for putting up with me for 12 years. You know, only my wife knows what that's like, really. So thank you very much. I also want to thank all of the fellow board members, past and present. Over 12 years, there's been a lot of them. What I really particularly want to thank, though, is how, and David alluded to this, how we've conducted ourselves. You're not always going to agree, but we have done it. We've disagreed professionally. We've disagreed respectfully. That hasn't always been true on the Rockford School Board. I've been around long enough to remember that. But I do think that one of the things we've brought is professionalism, and I appreciate everybody who's done that. I think every board member I've served with has done it for the right purposes. We disagree on ways to achieve the results, but I don't think anybody's ever done this for the wrong reason. And lastly, I just want to thank the partners in the law firm that I practice in. When I first got elected, I had other professionals in town tell me, well, I can't even run for the school board because I'm not allowed to by my firm, because they don't want me serving somewhere that might be controversial. I was blessed to practice with a firm of independent thinkers who also think that education is important and who have supported me for 12 years in this endeavor. So what have we accomplished in 12 years, and what do I think still needs to be done? I've been involved with the school district for 33 years in one form or another. I moved here in 1990. My oldest daughter was going into second grade, so I've been first off involved as a parent. Then I was involved as a spouse of a teacher. Then I was involved as the parent of a teacher. Then I was involved as a board member. And now I'm back to being the parent of students again. It is the Rockford School District, the entire time I've lived in Rockford, had a reputation for being a low-performing organization. But when I got elected and got on the board, I was surprised at just how low-performing it was. Every time we turned a rock over, we found something. The year that I got elected, the then administration had announced to the community that they projected a $40 million deficit, and they formed a secret committee of community members trying to decide what to do about that. It was hugely controversial, lots of headlines. That was 13 years ago now. I don't know how many of you remember it. And I don't know how many of you remember that when the audited financial statements came in that fall, they showed a $30 million surplus. $70 million swing between what was projected and what actually happened. That's a way to erode trust in a community. It's a way to not be able to plan. One of the things that we did, and this was actually one of the things that I took on, is to try to make sure that never happened again. And we formed a finance committee with community members on it. We did everything transparently. We had open meetings, and I am proud to look back and realize we improved the district's finances. We improved its bond rating. We did balanced budgets every year. The only time we show up with a deficit is because of something the state did to us after the fact, usually. One year they clawed back some of the money that they had given us. Sometimes they were late in their payments to us, but we ran balanced budgets. We reduced our real estate tax levy the year I got on the board by giving back a tax that had been imposed, and then we've kept the levy flat since then. We are actually levying less in real estate taxes now than we were, this organization was 12 years ago. I don't know that you can find another organization, another government organization in town that can say that. On the IT side, a teacher who came to us from a high-performing suburban district said to me one day early on, I can't use the technology in the classroom. It's unusable. It takes so long to just download anything or to get anything running. It's unusable. Kids aren't going to sit here and wait for this. Our technology was unusable. And when I talked about it, one of the analogy that I used is if you want technology in the classroom, it has to be a utility. It has to be, for a classroom teacher, they have to be able to like flip a switch, like the light switch, and the lights come on, and they need to be able to just use it. It needs to be there. We spent a lot of time and effort to get us to the point where that's what our technology in the classroom is like. It hasn't been an easy road, and we've had some issues. There was one year when the district installed a software upgrade on the smart boards, which was not backwards compatible, and teachers walked in the first day of school and found they'd lost a bunch of content that they couldn't access. That was a step backwards. We've had issues with internet outages and software outages, and we've talked about those, and the administration has worked to resolve those issues. And, nothing's ever going to be perfect, but we are, on the IT side, we are light years ahead of where we were 12 years ago. Payroll, you might think this would be like a non-issue, right? But when I got on the board, one of the biggest issues for teachers is they couldn't figure out how they were being paid. They were getting paychecks with random numbers on them that weren't tied to anything because we had a software program that didn't allow us to issue paychecks that actually specified how teachers were being made. That sounds like a simple fix. It wasn't a simple fix. And I know that the administration spent countless hours. I think they had to do some software programming. I'm not even sure it's a perfect system now, but it's much better than it was, and I haven't heard that particular complaint in probably a decade at this point. Human resources. The HR department, when I first got on the board, you know what it was famous for? It was famous for not answering the phone. You would call the HR department, and if somebody answered, they'd say, can you hold? And they'd put you on hold, and then they'd never pick up. That's again, the HR department isn't perfect, but it's light years ahead of where it was, and it's more customer service focused. When I got on the board, it took forever to make offers to teachers, new teachers. The system that was in place when I got on the board, offers to new teachers coming out of college really couldn't be made until the end of the summer, and so we were losing recruits who were going to other school districts because we couldn't make them an offer, and we took that on and we got it fixed. Buses. I said I wouldn't be able to talk about buses again. I'm going to talk about buses one more time. When I got on the board, the average age of our bus fleet was 10 years. There were frequent breakdowns and high maintenance and repair costs. How frequent, you might say? Early on in my tenure, we were experiencing 8 to 10 bus breakdowns a day. 8 to 10 buses broke down a day. We now have the average fleet age reduced to 5 years, and the rate's now about 2 to 3 per week, and the issues when they do break down are less serious. On the facilities, one of the first things we did is look at the facilities and say, we've got to do something about these facilities. We inherited facilities that nobody had touched in decades, and they were falling apart. I would walk into classrooms. I don't think there was a single classroom I walked into in those days that didn't have duct tape. Duct tape was holding the school district together. There were extension cords running across every classroom. We developed a $275 million facilities plan. We sold it to the community. Part of that was issuing bonds, part of it was other funding, and we implemented it, and we kept it on track and on time. And we're working to maintain the facilities going forward. One of the statistics that I was, again, shocked by when I got on the board is that the average open time on work orders in the district was 300 days. If a teacher or a principal reported something wrong in their classroom or in the school building, it would take 10 months on average to fix it. At the end of 2022, our average open for work tickets is 10 days. Principal development. One of the conclusions that I've come to are principals are the key to school districts. They are mini CEOs. They run their buildings. How buildings perform often almost always depend on the principals. We didn't really have any principal development program in place, and we talked about that for 12 years. Well, we talked about it for 10 years. We tried different things. The first things that we tried weren't very robust. Dr. Jarrett came to us with a model that was being done by the Chicago Public Schools in partnership with universities in Chicago. We actually tried to sort of partner with that and use the universities in Chicago, which wasn't really practical. And what we ended up doing was duplicating that program through NIU. And we are just now starting to see the cohorts graduating from that. And, you know, Chicago saw some real increases, some very good increases in student achievement once they started developing their principles. And I'm hoping that the same thing happens here. With teacher recruitment, we know there's a national teacher shortage. We know that we need a more diverse teaching staff. And we've created teacher pipelines because recruiting people from outside of Rockford is actually kind of difficult, and across every industry in Rockford, across every profession in Rockford. And so what we've did is look at our own population and say, let's find ways to develop those people and convince them to become teachers. And we have committed significant dollars. The board has committed significant dollars over the years to creating those programs and funding them, and getting student teachers in here is a different pipeline. You know, most teachers do their student teaching within driving distance of their university, because that way they don't need housing. So one of the barriers that we had here was housing, and so we've created a program to provide housing to student teachers. Curriculum development. I remember we started this, the then president of the REA stood at the podium and said how thrilled she was at it, because nobody could remember having an aligned curriculum, a vertically aligned curriculum throughout this district. That work is not done. That work is still going on, but at least we got it started. So none of this happened easily or overnight. I use the word we a lot. The board sometimes suggested things. The board supported what the administration brought to us, but most of the work was done by the administration. Sometimes we tried things that didn't work, and then we had to try new things. Everything took a tremendous amount of time, effort, and focus, particularly from the administration. And usually it ended up requiring more resources or simply getting the right people in place, or a combination of the two, and that all takes time. Well, I'm proud of all of those accomplishments. My biggest regret is that they weren't accompanied by increases in student achievement. I started in this position thinking that we could not hold people accountable for academic results if we weren't giving them the resources to do their jobs. Safe and secure buildings, technology that actually works, an aligned curriculum, financial stabilities, and human resources support. I think we're at the point where we've provided all that, but we weren't seeing increases in student achievement. The board started focusing on the lack of progress in student achievement in late 2018 and 2019. Anybody who was actually paying attention during that time period remembers we had some fairly pointed discussions in open session on the floor about those issues during that time period. And we started discussing with the administration specific targets for increased achievement and plans to achieve those targets. Then, as soon as school started in the fall of 2019, we were hit by a massive ransomware attack that disabled all of the district's IT infrastructure. Teachers and administrators rose to that occasion. Teachers were wearing T-shirts that said, "Teach like it's 1999." But the entire focus of the district for a semester was just surviving and recovering from that attack. Then, just as we were digging out from that, what happened? COVID hit. All schools in the state were closed to in-person learning from March 2020 through the end of that semester. That fall, we were the largest school district in the state of Illinois to offer an in-person option, but only about 60% of students chose it. And it eventually became apparent after the fact that remote learning was not really working for large numbers of students. Some children just simply disappeared for the duration. They disappeared from our roles. Some children supposedly were enrolled for remote learning, but once they came back, it was clear that they really had not done anything for 2 years. The schools are still trying to deal with the aftermath of the pandemic and remote learning, and will be for the foreseeable future. Despite that, the preliminary indications are that the metrics that the board and administration agreed to focus on back in 2019 are starting to show improvement. The freshman on track rate is increasing, the graduation rate is increasing, and based on the midwinter MAP scores, it does look like the district could see some significant increases in the percentage of third graders who are reading at grade level when they take the IAR this spring. When I got on the board, I thought I'd stay on for 8 years at the maximum. It's been 12. It's a long time, although in some ways it passed in the blink of an eye. I never imagined when I ran for the school board that I would be dealing with a ransomware attack or a pandemic, let alone both. I'm leaving knowing I didn't accomplish everything I would have liked to have accomplished, that there's a lot left to do. But I do think that I helped to build a good foundation that didn't exist before. It's going to be up to the new board to do the equally hard work of building something on that foundation, and I wish them the best of luck in doing that.
Thank you, Tim. Just for everybody out there, we got these globes, the Earth, and it says thank you for your service to RPS 205. So thank you for those. My first 2 years on the board were so different than what any of you new board members are going to experience, or anything that any of you've ever experienced. Because my first 2 years on the board, I served under a superintendent, LaVon Sheffield, who would not allow staff to communicate with board members. Staff were so intimidated that conversations were recorded and reported back to the superintendent. There was also the problem with transparency with expenditures and money and deficits. And I remember holding a forum, a public forum, for my constituents and anybody else who wanted to come to talk about what the real numbers were and how those numbers didn't align with what was being presented. I'd like to compare that to the current administration, where board inquiries are encouraged and expected, and whenever possible, answered in 24 hours. Where the superintendent and cabinet members return phone calls, generally on the same day, and make themselves available to meet in person as needed. I hope all board members, but especially new board members, take advantage of the knowledge and availability of these cabinet members and the superintendent and our board coordinator, who is kind of the backbone of the board and keeps everything running, and I thank you for all you've done. Tim and I were kind of comparing what our accomplishment lists were, and so there's a few things that I'll add. Because my first 2 years under LaVon Sheffield, I don't have a lot to tell you that we accomplished. So it really started with the new board that came with a new perspective and new leadership in 2012, or 11, excuse me. And that leadership turned over a few times. I think I had 3 interim superintendents before we ended up with, in our current position with Dr. Jarrett. Tim talked about the facilities plan, and if you've been to board members recently, you've probably heard that we are beginning the process of developing a new facilities plan. But that 10-year facility plan, as a result of that, we actually built 2 new schools. We put in 2 field houses, which was always my regret that that was the very first thing we did on there. But at the end of the day, they were going to get done, and they had great curb appeal and brought some good community support. We took our cafetoriums that we have in had in our elementary schools, and we built them out so that we would have a cafeteria and a gymnasium, so that when it was time to eat, the PE classes didn't have to stop, and the PE teachers weren't participatory in setting up and cleaning up the cafetoriums for the lunch time. We added security vestibules, and so in addition to the IT security that we saw from a technological standpoint, we're also seeing a physical security in our school that we had not had previously. We dropped the average age of our buildings from 68, and that was in 2011, to 50 in 2021. We moved administration to this current location. And I don't know if all of you realize this, but at the time we were right before we were going to move into here, we had gotten a bid to replace all the windows in the old administration building, which was actually Rockford Central High School many, many years ago. My late mother-in-law went there. And it was going to cost us the same amount of money to replace those buildings as it did for us to buy this building, with all of its contents. A great move, because this better shows and gives better space for an $580 million organization and the opportunities, because as Tim said, it was held together with duct tape, and there were extension cords, and there were buckets because those windows were leaking. So every time it rained, we had to take care of that with buckets and towels. We increased our early childhood education to 4, so that we have a center in each of our 4 quadrants. We also have 2 early childhood classrooms at Roosevelt. We also have 2 early child classrooms in collaboration with Circle of Learning. And we have put together a program where we collaborated with the city on Head Start and moving those Head Start classrooms into our buildings. We started the high school academies, and the gentleman who stood up and said thank you for, I wasn't behind high school academies, but I do remember our trip down to Nashville with Tim. Who else was with us at that time? Do you remember? Laura Powers. But that was the start of it, you know, and we started slow at Jefferson and then increased it throughout the system. And we ended up with certifications for our students or college readiness. I worked on a team that coordinated with Crusader Clinic to build a medical clinic at Auburn High School, which still is there and serves our students in that quadrant, but also students in the community. We increased our cooperation or collaboration with Rock Valley College, both with the Running Start for college degree, as well as the one that we're going to start this fall for careers. We went downstate, and I say we, I think it was Dr. Vosberg who went downstate and worked to become a promise zone. And the promise zone gave opportunities for tuition-free college for RPS 205 students. And it's founded on the model that in Michigan, and is an attraction that we had hoped to help make this the first choice for families in our community. First, this meaning RPS 205. We expanded our adaptive learning opportunities. We used to call those alternative, by the way, alternative education, but now the word is adaptive learning opportunities, both at Roosevelt and with the ILC program, and there will be continued movement and expansion to serve those students going forward. We also improved our credit recovery program. We found out that it was difficult for students to travel to Roosevelt to do credit recovery, so we've put it in our schools after school, and students, and it's incredibly successful, well attended, and students are doing well, and it should be reflected in a further increase in the graduation rate, because these are students especially who are just short certain classes, and it helps them get over the hump so that they're able to graduate. But it also is for those students who during COVID weren't able to connect remotely and need to make up those classes. We turned Haskell around during this tenure, changing it to the STEAM program, where now there's a waiting list. And even though the scores are low, we have seen a 30% increase in their reading scores over the past 2 years. We've collaborated with community partners, and I hope, as Ms. Giangelli said earlier, we've done a better job of listening to the community members and what we need and what we need to do to meet the needs of all of our students. And we have developed progressive discipline models, the framework that was spoken about both when Annie Pfeiffer was up here and also with Mr. Browlands, where we are looking at standards of service and standards of practice. It's no longer just the administration evaluating what the schools are doing, but the schools get to evaluate what the administration is doing to help them. And this is collaborative effort should increase, for example, the reading scores that we saw on the presentation tonight. Our professional development was revamped to support teachers in the district with programs and initiatives, and the catalog is expansive, but it really is so that our teachers can teach what we have given them to teach. And we've added a cabinet-level chief of diversity, equity, and inclusion to work with all three of those areas. We, as Mr. Rollins said, we did, I think, an more than admirable job during the pandemic. And that was evident in the scores that we saw the year after, because they increased more than they had throughout the rest of the state. We exceeded the performance of the other districts in the state. And we actually reduced the average bus age to 4.68 years, Mr. Rollins. Which I hope, as Mr. Rollins has gone through, the devil is in the details. It's making sure that you do your homework, that you ask your questions, again, that you use the resources that you have. We are not educators. We are here, that has been the longest learning curve for myself and others, is we are governance. We are here to make sure the processes are followed. We are here to oversee. We have 2 employees, and it is their job to bring the experts together to come up with the best programs and initiatives for our board to act on. And for our board to hold accountable to make sure that those processes are done. I believe each of you, the new board members and the returning board members, have the best interest of students, the district, and the community at heart. I believe we 3 board members, with a combined 33 years of experience, are leaving the district in a better place than when any of us joined the board. I believe that we have not attained, or I have not attained, as Mr. Rollins said, everywhere we would like to have been when we started this journey over a decade ago. Our attendance has not returned to pre-pandemic levels. We still have chronic absenteeism. Our reading and math scores are trending up, but they're still not in line with state averages. Our graduation rates remain low, but freshmen on track and credit recovery are, I hope, going to push those higher in a shorter period of time. Our teacher shortage and staff diversity are being addressed through initiative, but those outcomes take time. We are starting to see some results with that, with our first cohort of our pathway students, and tonight we learned in our HR report that we have our first LEAP candidate who has gone through the program, which was a paraprofessional, correct? So a paraprofessional who we sponsored to go to NIU is going to be starting work with us in the fall as a teacher. And we have 19 others in that cohort that will finish at the end of the summer. Is that correct? So I trust that all of you will continue to improve on the work that we have seeded. Darn it. And I can't stress enough that communication is the key. With administration, with students, with parents, with the community, and most importantly, with fellow members. I think that doesn't happen enough. I know that I've made a lot of calls when I had questions, but or I was looking to make sure that there was an understanding of what was being brought forward to the board, but that needs to happen among each other. And that is an area that I think that can be improved on as you move forward as a board. That, and you can have a meeting where you don't provide food and everybody gets hungry and drinks olive juice, right? All right, private joke. I would like now to have the pleasure and the honor to swear in the new board. However, before because there will not be a president after the new board is seated, in order to facilitate the election of the new board president, I will need a motion and a second to assign Tiana McCall to serve as president pro tem immediately after the new board has been seated.
So moved.
The president pro tem will also be tasked with closing this portion of the meeting and opening up the portion of the meeting where the officers will be elected. I'll take that motion now.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Will the coordinator please call the roll?
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Absolutely.
The motion passes unanimously.
We'll now proceed with the swearing in of board members. I'll ask Ms. Bennett, Mr. Carpenter, Ms. Haley, Ms. McCall, Ms. Pearson, Mr. Schubert, and Ms. Stanford to come forward in a semicircle facing the audience, and I will give you the oath. I'll meet you out there. I will administer the oath, right? Sorry. All right. So I'm going to ask you to repeat after me. I, you'll state your name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Member of Board of Education of Rockford Public School District 205, Winnebago, Boone Counties, Illinois, in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the laws of the State of Illinois, to the best of my ability.
I, Denise Pearson, do affirm faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Member of Board of Education of Rockford School District 205, Winnebago, Boone Counties, Illinois, in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the laws of the State of Illinois.
I further swear that I shall respect taxpayers' interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets.
I further swear that I shall respect taxpayers' interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets.
I shall encourage and respect the free expression of my opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board, while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board, while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual, and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a public board meeting.
I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual, and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a public board meeting.
I shall abide by majority decisions of the boards while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
I shall abide by the majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
As part of the Board of Education, I shall accept the responsibility for my role in the equitable and quality education of every student in the district, the school district.
As part of the Board of Education, I shall accept the responsibility of my role in the equitable and quality education of every student in the school district.
I shall foster with the board extensive participation of the community, formulate goals, define outcomes, and set the course for Rockford School District number 205, Winnebago, Boone Counties, Illinois.
I shall foster with the board extensive participation of the community, formulate goals, define outcomes, and set the course for Rockford School District 205, Winnebago, Boone Counties, Illinois.
I shall assist in establishing a structure and an environment designed to ensure all students have the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework.
I shall assist in establishing a structure and an environment designed to ensure all students have the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework.
I shall strive to ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement and all conditions affecting the education of our children in compliance with state law.
I shall strive to ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement and all conditions affecting the education of our children in compliance with state law.
I shall serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students in our community schools to advance the vision for Rockford School District number 205, Winnebago, Boone County, Illinois.
I shall serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students in our community schools to advance the vision for Rockford School District 205, Winnebago, Boone Counties, Illinois.
And I shall strive to work together with the district superintendent to lead the school district toward fulfilling the vision the board has created, fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills, knowledge, citizenship, and personal development.
Fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills, knowledge, citizenship, and personal development.
Please accept my best wishes for your success as you prepare to take up the responsibility and challenges of your role as board members serving the Rockford Public Schools. I will now ask President Pro Tem to come forward and take over the meeting as Mr. Rollins, Mr. Siegel, and I take our leave.
Okay. In order to proceed with the election of officers, I ask for a motion for the adjournment. SyncID. Motion? SyncID.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor for the motion to adjourn SyncID, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. It has been my honor and pleasure serving on the board. Oh, wait. I've been punked. I now call this meeting to order. Elections of the board president. Nominations are now in order for the president of the board. May I have your nominations?
Denise Pearson.
Denise Pearson.
Denise Pearson.
The following individual have been nominated for president: Denise Pearson, Is there, okay. Okay, are there any other nominations for president? Okay, if not, is there a motion to close the nominations and cast a vote for the nominee?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Will the coordinator please call the roll?
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Schubert?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Ms. Pearson, congratulations. Would you please take over the seat as president?
Thank you.
Okay. And then you started the election of the...
I appreciate your patience. The election of the vice president. Nominations are now in order for the office of vice president for the board. May I have your nominations? Starting with Mr. Carpenter. Yes, Mr. Carpenter.
Nominate Tiana McCall.
Paul Carpenter.
Or Mr. Grant.
I'll nominate Tiana McCall.
Tiana McCall.
Welcome,
I'm just here to help.
Tiana McCall, Vice President of RPS 205 School Board.
No, okay, so not yet.
One moment, please.
So now the nominations are closed. You have two.
The nominations are now closed.
You have two, so.
We have two or more.
But, since you've kind of polled the board already, but otherwise you would follow. Okay, the following board members are you. So you would call first Tiana's name and ask for each one to call out who their nominee is for choice, as a choice. But it sounds like you already had all of the numbers of individuals who are voting, basically.
Correct.
Stating it, so.
Thank you very much for your patience. We will now have a motion to accept Tiana McCall as the Vice President of RPS 205 Board.
So moved.
Second.
The motion carries.
No, now you vote.
Now we vote. I'm nervous. Coordinator, please call the roll.
Okay. Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Schubert?
Yes.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Nominations are now in order for the office of Secretary of the Board. May I have your nominations?
June Stanford.
Second.
Are there any other nominations for Secretary?
Okay, hearing none.
Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Did we get a...
Yes. I don't remember seeing this piece.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Schubert?
Yes.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
June Stanford will be the secretary for RPS 205 School Board. Are there any other nominations for secretary?
Oh, no, you've already done.
Thank you.
So then you do this part down there.
Thank you. Before you, I propose schedule for regular board meeting dates. Are there any questions? If not, will the coordinator call the roll? And a second.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this?
Any discussion? No discussion? Is there any additional business from board members?
Oh, no, now we'll call the roll.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry to the public. Now we will call the roll.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Schubert?
Yes.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Now, are there any additional business of the board that you would like to discuss or have added to the next agenda? If not, I take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Board dismissed. Thank you.